I used to wake with a strange dread in my chest, not because the day itself was heavy, but because I knew the day would bring its familiar messenger. The mail would come, and with it, another envelope, another bill, another reminder that the world of numbers seemed to rule my peace. I remember the sound of paper against paper, the quiet scrape of an envelope being opened, and how a single line of ink could tighten my breath as though it had the power to command my life. I would stare at figures that looked larger than my hope, and I would feel, without even realizing it, that I was small before them, that money was the master, and I was the servant. That was the lie I lived under. And perhaps you have lived under it too. But one night, something in me refused to bow any longer. I did not ask for freedom as a beggar asks, with trembling hands and a pleading voice. I did not pray to a distant power in the sky, hoping it might notice me. I did something altogether different. I spoke from the center of my being. I spoke as God speaks. I did not beg for release. I declared release. I did not hope for provision. I assumed provision. And the next morning, this is the part that once would have sounded impossible to me. My world began to rearrange itself to match my word. Now listen to me quietly, because what I am about to say is not meant to excite you for a moment and then fade like a bright flame in a draught. This is meant to carry you gently into sleep, into that stillness where the deepest truths sink into the soul and take root. I am going to tell you something most have never been told, and many would resist if they heard it in the harsh light of day. But when you hear it now, in the quiet, when the body is soft and the mind begins to loosen its grip, it will land in you like a seed falling into fertile ground. They lied to you about money. They did not merely misunderstand it. They built an entire world upon a false foundation, and then they asked you to live inside that falsehood as though it were law. They told you money is power. They told you money is security. They told you money is freedom. They told you money is the measure of your worth, the gatekeeper of your peace, the judge of your future. And because you believed them, you began to live as though life itself depended on a number, on paper, on metal, on ink, on the opinions and decisions of other men. But money has no life of its own. It cannot speak. It cannot decide. It cannot bless. It cannot curse. It cannot deny you a thing unless you first grant it authority in your own consciousness. And that is the truth that overturns the whole structure of fear. The problem was never the numbers. The problem was never the amount. The problem was never the bill, the debt, the lack, or the timing. The problem is consciousness. The problem is the unseen state you occupy when no one is watching. The problem is the inner speech you accept as normal, the secret confessions you make in the silence of your own mind, the little phrases you whisper to yourself when you look at your account, when you hear the word payment, when you think about tomorrow. For the world you see is not the cause of your life. It is the effect. It is the shadow. It is the echo of what you have assumed to be true about yourself. And if you have been living in fear of money, if you have been tightening inside at the thought of an expense, if you have been feeling that familiar sinking when you imagine bills arriving, then understand this: you have not been cursed by fate. You have not been abandoned. You have simply been using the creative power of your own being without knowing it. And you have been using it in a way that sustains the very pressure you long to escape. I know how cruel this can feel at first, because the mind wants to protest. It wants to say, but look at the facts. It wants to say, but I have responsibilities. It wants to say, but the world is hard. And yes, in the world of appearances, it can look hard. But I am not speaking to you now as a philosopher offering comfort. I am speaking to you as one who has tested a law and found it faithful. And I tell you, if money has been a weight on your chest, it is only because you have unknowingly agreed to carry it. The agreement can be broken, and the moment you break it within, the world without must begin to reflect that new freedom. What if you could erase the feeling of financial pressure, not by running faster on the treadmill of effort, not by trying to control every outer detail, not by living in constant calculation, but by speaking one command from the center of your being? What if you could fall asleep tonight, not as a person burdened by numbers, but as a person already supplied, already secure, already free? What if the very thing you feared, opening the mail, checking the account, facing the bill, became ordinary, harmless, even irrelevant, because you had entered a state where money could no longer threaten you? This is not a fantasy I am offering you. It is not a pleasant dream to soothe you. It is a law, and a law never fails. It works whether you know it or not. It works in the life of the fearful and in the life of the faithful. It works for the man who complains and for the woman who gives thanks. The difference is only this: one uses it unconsciously and suffers its harvest, and the other uses it knowingly and reaps freedom. Tonight I will show you the exact inner act I perform when I desire to dissolve the pressure of money. I will show you how to speak from the I am, the creative center, and how to command the outer world to mirror the inner freedom. I will show you why most prayers for money fail, why most attempts to manifest remain empty, and why the very idea of striving for wealth often keeps you chained to lack. And I will show you something far more precious than a temporary increase: the inner freedom that cannot be taken from you, the calm authority of one who knows that supply is not outside but within. And yes, I will make this practical. I will not leave you with poetry alone. I will guide you into the way this law is actually used. In the stillness of the night, where the subconscious is open and faithful, where a single assumption impressed with feeling becomes a seed that must bear fruit. If you have ever wondered, am I doing this right? If you have feared that one doubt ruined everything, if you have felt that the world mocks you with its facts and figures, then listen gently. Nothing is lost. The law is not fragile. Your power is not delicate. The moment you turn inward and assume the end, the moment you speak from being rather than from begging, the moment you feel the relief of freedom as though it were already yours, the process begins. Quietly, surely, inevitably. But I must warn you of something, and I say it with love. Most people live their entire lives believing the lie because it feels reasonable. They believe money is the cause because the senses insist upon it. They believe security comes from the bank because the world repeats it endlessly. They believe peace is purchased because they have never known the peace that comes from within. And so they keep praying as servants when they were born to reign. They keep waiting for the outer world to give them permission to relax. They keep postponing their joy until the account changes, until the bill is paid, until the circumstances agree. And what do they discover? That the circumstances never quite agree. There is always another bill, another fear, another reason to wait, another reason to feel unsafe. That is the treadmill of the old belief, and it is exhausting. It is not life, it is bondage. But when you hear the truth, when you let it in, something begins to loosen. The shoulders soften, the breath deepens, the mind grows quiet. You feel, perhaps for the first time in a long time, that your life is not held hostage by paper and numbers. You begin to sense that money is not a master. Money is a shadow. Money is an echo. Money is the outpicturing of an inner state. And states can be changed. Now, if you stay with me, if you let these words wash over you in the quiet of your room, if you allow your mind to rest and your heart to listen, I will take you step by step into the truth that sets men and women free. I will show you the hidden mechanism behind every debt and every blessing, and why the same power that once produced pressure can now produce release. And I will lead you into the way of assuming, the way of speaking as God speaks, the way of entering sleep not as one waiting, but as one who has already received. And at the end, I will give you the command, the sentence, the simple decree that when spoken with the right spirit, changes the entire structure of your experience. Not because the sentence itself is magic, but because it leads you into the state where the work is finished. When you speak it from that state, you will not be trying to convince the world. You will be informing the world of what is already done. And the world, being only the echo of consciousness, will have no choice but to comply. So settle now. Let the body grow a little heavier. Let the breath slow. You do not need to strain to understand. You only need to listen. For what I am about to unfold is not a lesson to be memorized. It is a remembrance. It is the return of a power you have been using all your life without knowing its name. They lied to you about money, and tonight you will hear the truth. I have been speaking publicly for many years, in rooms both small and large, to men and women who arrived with the same quiet hunger. Some came because life had bruised them. Some came because they were curious. Some came because they had tried every outer remedy, and still found themselves returning to the same inner ache. And among them, again and again, was this one question, sometimes spoken aloud, sometimes hidden behind other questions: why does money feel like it rules my life? They would dress it up in different ways. They would call it business. They would call it debt. They would call it the economy. But beneath every form was the same feeling, a sense of being bound. Now I must make something clear at the outset, so that you understand what kind of message you are hearing tonight. I am not offering you superstition. I am not asking you to believe in lucky charms, or to rely on chance, or to seek a sign in the sky. I am speaking of a law as definite as any law you trust every day, without thinking. You do not believe in gravity in order for it to work. You simply live within its operation, and the law I speak of operates in the same way. It is impartial. It is faithful. It does not choose favorites. It does not ask whether you have been good or bad, educated or uneducated, worthy or unworthy. It simply responds to the state you occupy. When I speak of God, I am not speaking of a distant being seated beyond the stars, handing out blessings and burdens at random. I am speaking of the only God you will ever truly know, your own awareness of being, the silent sense within you that declares, without effort, I am. That awareness is the creative power. That is the operant power. And it is not separate from you, because it is you. It is what you are before you attach a name, a story, or a limitation to yourself. This is why I have always returned again and again to the simplest and most profound statement ever given to man. When Moses asked for the name of the one who sent him, he did not receive a grand title. He received a revelation. I am that I am. Tell them I am has sent you. That is not a name to be worshipped at a distance. It is an identity to be assumed. It is the key to the entire mystery of creation. For every time you say I am, you are using the name of God. And whatever you attach to it becomes your experience. In my lectures, I often open the scriptures, not to speak of history, not to argue doctrine, but to reveal the psychological drama that is taking place within you. The Bible, when read rightly, is not the story of a people long ago. It is the story of consciousness. It is the story of states. It is the story of you moving through the inner world, discovering that imagination is the creator and that the outer world is its shadow. When the scripture says God said, "Let there be," it is not describing something that happened once and ended. It is describing what is happening every time you assume a state and clothe it with feeling. Every time you inwardly say, I am, and you mean it, you are saying, let there be. And the world must eventually echo it. But most people have been trained to think the other way around. They have been trained to think that the visible world is the cause, and the inner world is the effect. They look at a bank balance, and they feel peace or panic. They look at a bill, and they feel relief or dread. They treat money as though it has the power to create feeling within them. In other words, they have been taught that money is the cause, and their emotional state is the effect. And because they accept this, they live at the mercy of appearances. They rise and fall with numbers. They feel secure when the outer world smiles, and frightened when it frowns. They do not realize that this is backwards. Money is not the cause. Money is the effect. The outer world does not generate your inner state. It reflects it. And if you will truly grasp this, you will begin to see why so many remain bound. They spend their lives trying to change the effect, while leaving the cause untouched. They work harder, struggle longer, chase opportunity, cut expenses, bargain with time, bargain with luck, bargain with people. yet still the same feeling returns, because the cause was never in the outer world. The cause was always in consciousness, and what you do not change within, you must meet again and again in the world without. Now I know this may sound bold, even offensive to the one who has been taught to be a victim of conditions. The world likes to tell you that you are small, that you are shaped by circumstances, that you are at the mercy of economies and employers and seasons and chance. It is a convenient belief for those who profit from your fear. It keeps you pleading. It keeps you waiting. It keeps you looking outside yourself for permission to live. But the law reveals something far more liberating. The world is yourself pushed out. There is no one to change but self. When I say imagination creates reality, I do not mean that you merely daydream and life hands you a prize. I mean that imagination is the very substance of your life. Your imagining, your inner activity of seeing, hearing, and feeling forms the pattern that the outer world must follow. The subconscious mind takes the impression of your inner state and externalizes it as events, people, and circumstances. This is not mystical poetry. It is a principle that can be tested in the simplest ways, and when you test it, it will prove itself with exactness. If you have ever found yourself replaying a conversation inwardly, and then later meeting the very tone you rehearsed, you have seen the law. If you have ever expected rejection and found it, or expected kindness and received it, you have seen the law. If you have ever assumed that something would go wrong, and then watched it unfold exactly as you feared, you have seen the law in operation. The tragedy is not that the law exists. The tragedy is that most do not know they are using it, and so they use it against themselves. Now understand the tone of what I am offering you tonight. This is not a talk meant to stir you into frantic action. It is not a speech designed to whip you into motivation, as though effort alone could deliver you. The world is full of such speeches, and they often leave people inspired for an hour and discouraged by morning. I am not here to give you a temporary lift. I am here to unveil a law that once understood will change the foundation upon which your life rests. If you have been living with a constant undercurrent of financial worry, this teaching matters because it shows you the one place you have never been told to look, the inner cause. It matters because it reveals that you do not need to wait for outer permission to feel secure. You can enter security first, and the outer world must catch up. It matters because it teaches you that money is not something you chase, but something that follows the state you occupy. It matters because it restores to you your dignity as the operant power, rather than a powerless creature hoping for mercy. In my time, men did not sit staring at glowing screens or chasing fleeting headlines from distant places. Yet the same fear existed. People feared the economy. They feared the market. They feared the employer. They feared the landlord. They feared the bank. They feared the letter. They feared the knock at the door. And all of it came down to the same inner confession: I am not safe. That confession, repeated in silence, shaped their world. And the moment it was replaced with a new confession, I am supplied, the world began to mirror a new reality. So I speak to you now, not as a distant narrator, but as one who has walked through these states, who has known what it is to feel pressure, and who has also known what it is to stand inwardly free, while the outer world still seems unchanged. I know the feeling of being mocked by appearances, and I know the quiet miracle of watching those appearances yield, not because I fought them, but because I changed the state from which I viewed them. You may have been told that this is wishful thinking. You may have been taught to distrust imagination, to treat it as childish fantasy. But I tell you that imagination is God, and to dismiss it is to dismiss the very power that creates your world. The reason this teaching seems strange is because it reverses what the senses insist upon. The senses tell you, see it first, then feel it. The law tells you, feel it first, then you will see it. The senses demand proof before peace. The law demands peace before proof. And those who can accept this reversal, those who dare to live from the end, discover that the world becomes astonishingly obedient. So let us set this foundation firmly now, before we go further. Money is not the source. Money is the shadow. You are not to worship shadows. You are to change the light that casts them. And that light is your own consciousness, your own I am, your own assumption of being. As you listen, I want you to notice what happens inside you. Perhaps there is resistance. Perhaps there is hope. Perhaps there is a quiet feeling of recognition, as though something you have always known is being spoken aloud. Whatever arises, do not fight it. Simply listen. Let the words carry you gently deeper. For in the next part, I will begin to tear apart the great lie in a more practical way. I will show you how money became a false god in the minds of men, and how you have been trained, without realizing it, to speak poverty into being with your own inner speech. And once you see how the lie was installed, you will see exactly how to remove it. They taught you, from the earliest days, to treat money as though it were a god. Perhaps they did not use that word, yet they trained your heart to respond the way a worshipper responds. They taught you to fear it, to chase it, to measure yourself by it, to feel safe only when it was near, and to feel panic when it seemed to move away. They taught you that money comes by labor, by struggle, by long hours and tired hands. They taught you that money comes by luck, by the favor of men, by the condition of the economy, by the decisions of banks and employers. They taught you that money is scarce, and that you must compete for it as though you were fighting over crumbs. And because you accepted that teaching, you began to live inside a world where money appeared to have authority over your peace. You began to wake in the morning already calculating. You began to move through the day carrying an invisible weight. And even when you were not looking at numbers, the thought of them lived inside you like a low, constant hum. That hum is not money. That hum is a state. And the state you dwell in becomes your world. Here is the great lie, and I want you to hear it gently but clearly, because the lie is old and it is deep, and it has kept good people in chains for their whole lives. The lie is that money is the cause. They told you if you have money, you will feel secure. They did not tell you, if you feel secure, money must come. They told you if you get the right job, the right opportunity, the right break, then your life will change. They did not tell you, if you change the concept you hold of yourself, your life must change. They told you, if the world improves, if the economy turns, if someone gives you a chance, then you will breathe. They did not tell you, you can breathe now, and the world must rearrange to match your new breath. Do you see the reversal? The world trained you to place cause outside yourself. And the moment you place cause outside yourself, you become a servant of shadows. You become a beggar, always waiting for the outer world to move first, always hoping that conditions will become kind enough to allow you peace. That is not freedom. That is bondage dressed as common sense. I have watched men spend their entire lives bowing to this lie. They rise early, they labor, they strain, they worry, they push themselves beyond joy. And then they look at their hands and wonder why they are still empty. They say, I did everything I was told, and the bitterness in their voice reveals the real wound. They believed the world's promise, and the world's promise failed them. But it did not fail because life is cruel. It failed because the promise was founded on a false cause. If money came by labor alone, the hardest workers on earth would be the wealthiest. Yet you and I both know this is not so. There are men who sweat under the sun until their backs are broken, and still they struggle. There are women who give their days to endless work, and still the numbers do not change. Meanwhile, another person, who seems almost effortless, steps into opportunity again and again. The world calls that luck. The world calls that privilege. The world calls that a mystery. But I tell you, the difference is not effort. The difference is state. The difference is assumption. The difference is the concept of self. Money has never had power of its own. It cannot choose where it goes. It cannot decide who receives it. It is not an intelligence. It is not a living force. It is a symbol, a shadow, an echo. And like every shadow, it follows the light that casts it. Money is a shadow, not a sun. A shadow cannot create itself. A shadow does not decide its shape. A shadow cannot improve by being attacked. If you run after a shadow, you will run forever, because the shadow moves as you move. But if you turn and change the light, the shadow must change instantly. And the light in your life is consciousness. The light is your awareness of being. The light is the state you occupy when you say, I am. Now I know what happens in the mind when I say this. The mind wants to argue. It wants to say, but money is necessary. Of course it is useful in this world. I am not denying its usefulness. I am denying its sovereignty. Money is a servant, not a master. The mind wants to say, but I need to pay bills. Yes, and you will. But you will not pay them by worshipping the bill. You will pay them by changing the state that produced it. You see, the outer world is always the record of an inner story. It is a living ledger of your assumptions. Every condition you see is the crystallization of something you once accepted as true. Perhaps you accepted it consciously, perhaps unconsciously, perhaps in childhood, perhaps in a moment of fear, perhaps through repetition over years. But the world you experience is your inner life made visible. If you have been living with money pressure, it is not because you are broken. It is not because you have no willpower. It is not because you lack intelligence. It is not because God has withheld from you. It is because you were taught the wrong cause. You were taught to worship the effect and ignore the source. And when you believe in the wrong cause, you will work against yourself no matter how hard you try. Here is what is so liberating about this, though it may sting for a moment when you first hear it. If the cause is within you, then the power is within you. If money were truly outside, if wealth were truly governed by chance, by fate, by the moods of other men, then you would be trapped. You would be forever at the mercy of circumstances. But if money is a shadow and consciousness is the sun, then you can change the entire picture by changing the state from which you live. So let us speak plainly about that true root. The root is your self-concept. It is the I am you carry. It is the quiet identity you assume yourself to be. Not the name on your papers, not the story you tell others, but the felt sense of yourself. Are you one who receives, or one who struggles? Are you one who is provided for, or one who must fight? Are you one who is safe, or one who is always bracing for loss? These are not just thoughts. These are states, and states are creative. I have known people who lived in modest circumstances outwardly but carried a sense of abundance inwardly. They spoke as though supply was natural, and life met them again and again with provision. I have known others who had large incomes but carried a sense of scarcity, and money slipped through their hands like water. The numbers were different, but the inner state ruled both lives. For the root determines the fruit, always. And here is why this matters so deeply for you tonight, especially if you intend to listen as you drift towards sleep. The most creative moments of your day are not the hours when you are busy and distracted. The most creative moment is the moment when you are quiet enough to hear what you really believe about yourself. The moment when you are alone, when the world's noise fades, and the inner voice rises. That is where the state is revealed. That is where the cause is chosen. That is where the seed is planted. Most people plant seeds of fear without knowing they are planting. They lie down at night and rehearse tomorrow's worries. They feel the heaviness of bills. They imagine the embarrassment of not having enough. They whisper silently, "What if?" And the subconscious accepts that feeling as a command. Then they wake and meet the harvest, and they call it reality. But reality is not the harvest. Reality is the seed. Reality is the state. Reality is the state. Reality is consciousness. The harvest is only yesterday's seed made visible. They lied to you about money by teaching you to think it is outside you, and by teaching you that you must earn peace from the world. But peace is not earned by money. Money follows peace when peace is assumed as a state. Security is not purchased by numbers. Numbers follow security when security is lived inwardly. First, do not misunderstand me. I am not saying you should ignore practical responsibilities or behave foolishly. I am not saying you should pretend bills do not exist while acting carelessly. I am saying something far more precise and far more powerful. I am saying that the emotional state from which you handle your life is the cause of the life you will experience. Handle your obligations from fear, and fear multiplies. Handle them from quiet authority, and authority multiplies. Pay from lack, and lack repeats. Pay from abundance, and abundance grows. Now let me strike at another part of the lie, because it is subtle, and it keeps people in bondage, even when they begin to study these teachings. They believe money is separate from them. They speak of money as though it were a creature with its own will. They say, money doesn't come to me. They say, money runs away. They say, money is hard to get. They speak of it as though it were a stubborn animal that must be chased and tamed. And the subconscious hears this and says, so be it. It produces the experience of money being distant, elusive, difficult. Not because money decided to be, but because the state was impressed. So I tell you now, become very gentle and very watchful with your language about money. Not because words are magic in themselves, but because words reveal your state. They expose your inner assumption. If you catch yourself saying, I never have enough, you are hearing the confession that produces your world. If you say, it's always a struggle, you are hearing the decree that sustains your struggle. And the most dangerous part is that you may say these things casually, as if they are simply descriptions, but in truth, they are commands. They are creative acts. The lie has trained you to keep renewing the old contract with lack. Every complaint is a signature. Every fearful sentence is an agreement. Every inner sigh of defeat is a prayer. And the law, being faithful, answers them. But tonight you are here, and that means something in you is ready to withdraw your signature from the lie. Something in you is ready to stop worshipping the shadow and return to the sun. Something in you is ready to reclaim the truth that money has never been the cause, and therefore money has never been the master. And I want you to feel the tenderness in this, because the moment you stop blaming yourself and stop blaming the world, a new door opens. You are not broken. You are not late. You have not ruined anything. You have simply been trained to live from a false premise. And the moment you see it, you can release it. The moment you release it, a new premise can be accepted. And the moment that new premise becomes your natural state, your outer life must begin to change. So let there be a little quiet courage in you now. If you are tired of fear, you can leave it. If you are tired of waiting for the world to give you permission to rest, you can rest now. If you are tired of being ruled by numbers, you can step into the state where numbers must obey. You do not do this by force. You do it by assumption. You do it by changing the concept of self. In the next part, I will take you deeper into the exact mechanics of this law. I will show you why consciousness is the only cause, how the subconscious takes your inner state as fact, and why what you call money problems are nothing more than a mirror reflecting a forgotten self-concept. And when you see that clearly, you will begin to understand why the old way of struggle could never have freed you, and why the new way, simple, quiet, inward, must. When I say to you that consciousness is the only cause, I am not offering you a clever phrase or a comforting thought. I am stating the foundation of everything I have ever taught and everything I have ever proven in my own experience. Consciousness is the only reality, not figuratively, not as a poetic way of speaking, but literally. Your world as you know it is consciousness objectified. It is the invisible made visible. It is the inner state cast outward like a shadow upon the screen of space. If you could truly accept this, even for a moment, you would feel something lift inside you. You would stop arguing with life as though it were an enemy. You would stop pleading with conditions as though they had authority. You would stop looking at the world like a prison made of iron and begin to see it as a mirror made of light. For a mirror does not create the face, it reflects it. A mirror does not decide the expression, it repeats it. The outer world is that mirror. It cannot initiate. It can only respond. This is why I tell you that the world exterior is echo. It is not voice, it is not origin. It is the reverberation of an inner sound. And the inner sound is your assumption, your feeling, your concept of self. If you have been hearing echoes of lack, echoes of struggle, echoes of limitation, it is because an inner voice has been speaking those things into the silence, sometimes without your knowing. The world has not been doing anything to you. It has been repeating you. Now the ordinary man will protest. He will say, "But I can see the bill. I can count the money. I can feel the pressure." And I do not deny that he can see these things. I only deny his interpretation of them. He believes the bill is the cause of his fear. He believes the empty account is the cause of his anxiety. He believes the numbers are the source. But the numbers are not the source. They are a photograph. They are an image printed from an earlier state. What you are looking at in the outer world is always the past made visible. It is the harvest of seeds once planted in consciousness. The world of facts is not the creative world. It is the world of effects. And to fight effects is to spend your strength on shadows. It is to wrestle smoke. It is to strike a mirror and expect your face to change. This is why the struggle with numbers rarely brings peace, even when it brings temporary improvement. A man may work for years, pay one debt, and find another rising. He may increase his income, and yet still carry the same inner fear, and soon enough the fear finds a new reason to exist, for the cause has not been touched. He has changed a circumstance while remaining the same consciousness, and consciousness being the only cause will reproduce itself again and again until it is changed. I want you to feel how gentle and how powerful this truth is. It does not condemn you. It liberates you. If money were truly the cause, you would be doomed to chase it. If circumstances were truly the cause, you would be at their mercy forever. But if consciousness is the cause, then you can change the cause at any moment. You can step out of one state and into another. And when you do, the world must follow, because the world has no choice but to reflect the state you occupy. The mirror metaphor is not merely an illustration. It is a precise description of how life operates. Imagine for a moment that you stand before a mirror with a scowl on your face. You have had a difficult day, and you feel tense, and you look at the mirror and see an image that seems to confirm your mood. Now imagine you become angry at the image. You say, "Why are you scowling at me?" And you strike the mirror, you polish it, you argue with it. Will the image change? It cannot. The mirror is innocent. It simply reflects what stands before it. If you wish the reflection to smile, you must change your own expression. You must relax your face, soften your eyes, and allow a smile to form. The moment you do, the mirror cannot resist. It must smile back. You do not need to persuade the mirror. You do not need to ask it politely. You do not need to wait for it to decide. The mirror responds automatically to what you are. So it is with your world. If you want a world that reflects abundance, you must become abundant in consciousness. If you want a world that reflects security, you must assume security. If you want a world that reflects freedom, you must enter the state of freedom. Then the outer world, being only a mirror, must rearrange itself to match. This is not mystical. It is exact. And the reason it feels mysterious is only because most men and women have been trained to live backwards. I have watched people do the opposite all their lives. They stand before the mirror of life with a fearful face, and they demand the reflection change first. They say, "When the debt is paid, then I will feel free. When the money comes, then I will relax. When the bank says yes, then I will sleep." They are asking the mirror to smile before they change their own expression. And because the mirror cannot do that, they remain trapped in the same loop. But the law is reversed. Feel free, and the debt dissolves by a bridge you could not have devised. Relax, and the money comes by channels unknown to reason. Sleep in peace, and the world must mirror peace. The effect does not precede the cause. The cause is consciousness, and the effect is the world you see. Now, when I say assume, I do not mean you force yourself into a strained pretense. I do not mean you deny your senses in a frantic way. So I mean you enter gently, naturally, into the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You accept within yourself the state you desire, as though it were already true. You wear it inwardly like a garment until it feels natural. And when it feels natural, it externalizes as the facts of your life. That is the law. It works whether your desire is small or great, whether it concerns money, health, love, or freedom. The principle is always the same. Let me speak to you as plainly as I can, because this is meant to be heard even as you drift towards sleep. Nothing is outside you. The power you have been searching for in the world is within you as your own awareness. There is no outer cause that can override the state you occupy. There is no circumstance so stubborn that it can resist a change in consciousness. Circumstances are servants. They have no life apart from the state that produced them. And now I will give you a small testimony, not to impress you with a story, but to anchor this truth in something living. A man once came to me after a lecture. He waited until most had gone, as though he were ashamed to be seen in his desperation. His clothes were neat but worn, his eyes tired, his voice tight with worry. He said, "Neville, I do not know what to do. I have debts that feel like a wall. I have tried to work more hours. I have tried to borrow. I have tried to bargain. Each month I get ahead a little, and then something happens, and I am behind again. It is as though life will not let me breathe." I listened to him for a moment, and then I asked him something that surprised him. I said, "Tell me, when you are alone at night, when no one can hear you, what do you say to yourself about money?" He looked away, and for a long moment he did not answer. Then he said quietly, I say it never works for me. I say I always struggle. I say I am trapped." And as he said it, I could hear the hopelessness in the tone, not just in the words. So I said to him, "Then you are not trapped by debts. You are trapped by a state. You have been confessing bondage night after night, and the world has faithfully mirrored your confession. The outer world is echo. You are the voice. Change the voice, and the echo must change." He frowned as though he could not imagine such a reversal. He said, "But the numbers are real." I said, "They are real as effects, but they are not real as causes. They are the mirror. Leave the mirror and change your face." He asked, "How?" And I told him, "Tonight when you lie down, do not rehearse the debts. Do not count the numbers. Do not argue with the facts. Enter the state of freedom. Feel what you would feel if the entire matter were settled. Not in the future, now. Feel relief. Feel ease. Feel that you have more than enough. Then let one simple sentence arise from that feeling, not as a wish, but as a decree. And when you have spoken it inwardly, do not dig it up again with doubt. Sleep in the assumption that it is done." He did not look convinced, but he was desperate enough to test it. And that is all the law ever asks. It asks to be tested. He returned a week later, his face changed in a way that was unmistakable. It was not that his world had become perfect in 7 days. It was that he had changed. He said, "Something happened." And I said, "Tell me." He told me that after 2 nights of practicing this, he received a letter, not a bill, but a notice that a long-standing charge had been misapplied and that a credit was due him. The amount was not enormous, but it removed the immediate pressure. More than that, he said, "I felt calm for the first time in years. I stopped waking up afraid." And I said, "That calm is the cause." The outer change was the echo. Within the month, he found himself offered work he had not sought, through an acquaintance he had not spoken to in years. He said, "It felt as though doors opened that I didn't even know were there." And I told him, "Of course, they were always there, but you could not see them from the state of bondage. You changed the state, and the world you walked through changed with you." Now do you see what happened? The law did not require him to know every step. It did not ask him to calculate how life would rearrange itself. It asked him for one thing: to change consciousness, to shift from the feeling of being trapped to the feeling of being free. The moment he did, the bridge of incidents began to form. The world did what it always does. It mirrored the state. This is why I say to you, stop fighting the numbers. Stop wrestling the mirror. Stop attacking effects. Do not spend your nights counting your problems and then wonder why they multiply. The world is echo. Change the voice. Change the inner speech. Change the feeling you carry into sleep. Change the concept you accept of yourself. Let the mirror do what it must. If this truth feels too simple, that is precisely why most miss it. The mind loves complexity, because complexity gives it the illusion of control. But the law is simple. It is simple because it is fundamental. It is like the law that water seeks its level. You do not need a complicated ritual to make water do what it does. You only need to remove the obstruction. And the obstruction is always a false belief about cause. So tonight, as you listen, let this be settled in you. Consciousness is the only cause. Your inner state is the creative power. The world you see is the echo. And if you want a new echo, you must speak a new inner word. In the next part, I will take you deeper into that inner word itself, into the language you have been using without realizing it, the sacred name I am, and the way your hidden inner speech has been shaping money in your life all along. There is a word the world uses carelessly, and because it is used carelessly, it becomes a chain. Men speak it with a shrug, women whisper it with a sigh, and they do not realize that the very thing they call just a thought is the seed of their tomorrow. That word is the inner word, the silent speech, the conversation you carry within yourself when no one is listening, when the room is quiet, when the lights are low and you are alone with your own mind. It is not the bank that binds you. It is not the creditor that traps you. It is not the debt itself that has power. The true bondage is the language you speak in secret about money. The inner commentary that rises automatically when you see a price, when you receive a letter, when you think of the future. It is the tone you habitually assume when you say to yourself, I can't, I don't have, it's not enough, it always goes wrong, I'm behind again. Those are not harmless phrases. They are decrees. They are the invisible script from which your visible life is acted. When the scriptures speak of sin, the world imagines moral failure, as though God were a distant judge keeping record of mistakes. But the sin I speak of is far more practical and far more immediate. Sin is missing the mark. Sin is attaching the creative name of God to a state you do not wish to express. Sin is taking the sacred words, I am, and joining them to poverty, fear, limitation, and then being forced to watch those unions become flesh in your world. For make no mistake, every time you say I am, you are speaking the name of God, not as theology, but as reality. It is the only name, it is the only power, and whatever you join to it becomes the garment your life must wear. If you say, I am broke, you have clothed the divine name with lack, and the world will faithfully reflect lack. If you say, I am always struggling, you have welded the name of God to struggle, and struggle will follow you like a shadow. If you say, I am unlucky, you have commanded misfortune as surely as if you had written it in stone. Most people do not realize they are doing this. They think their inner speech is private, harmless, forgotten as soon as it is spoken. But nothing is forgotten in consciousness. The subconscious is not a judge. It is a womb. It does not argue with you. It does not correct you. It does not say, surely you didn't mean, that it receives. It accepts and it produces. I want you to understand this gently, because when you hear it clearly, it removes both your fear and your blame. The subconscious accepts the tone of your being. It accepts what you feel as true. It is moved not by your cleverness, not by your reasoning, not by your vocabulary. It is moved by the reality of your inner mood. You may say outwardly, I will be fine, while inwardly you feel dread, and the subconscious will accept dread as the command. You may speak polite optimism to others, but if the secret voice within you keeps rehearsing disaster, then disaster is the seed you are planting. This is why so many say they have tried prayer and found it empty. They prayed with words while they lived in a state of fear. They asked for abundance while they felt unworthy. They repeated affirmations while their inner tone confessed the opposite. And the subconscious, being faithful, brought forth the deeper confession, not the surface request. So the first thing I ask of you tonight is not to learn a new sentence, but to notice the sentence you are already speaking. Listen to yourself, not the voice you use in public, not the courteous phrases you offer others, but the quiet murmuring you allow when you are alone. When you think of money, what is the first inner statement? When you imagine the month ahead, what is the inner picture? When you consider a bill, what is the secret feeling? That is your prayer. That is your confession. That is your command. Most speak poverty without ever saying the word poverty. They speak it in the tone of worry. They speak it in the habit of postponing joy. They speak it in the constant rehearsal of not yet. They speak it in the way they brace themselves before looking at a number. They speak it in the way they apologize for wanting more. They speak it in the way they assume that something will go wrong because it always has. And then they wonder why it continues. I tell you, the world is not punishing you, it is obeying you. Now here is where we must draw the sharp line between the beggar and the son, between asking and assuming, between praying as a man who doubts and praying as one who knows. Most men approach life as beggars. They may not say so, but their inner posture reveals it. They ask, will it happen? Can it happen? Do I deserve it? What if it fails? Their prayer is filled with conditions. Their affirmation is filled with strain. Their mind is always scanning the world for permission. They look at money as though it were held in the hands of others, and they must persuade those others to release it. That is begging. Begging is not only something done with the lips. Begging is a state. It is an inner posture of dependence. It is the feeling that the source is outside you, and you must earn its favor. And when you pray from that state, you do not move the law, you only confirm your lack. Because you are confessing, I do not have, the subconscious hears the confession and outpictures it faithfully. But the son does not beg. The son assumes, the son does not ask as one who is separate. The son speaks as one who belongs. He does not say, if only I could receive. He says, it is mine. He does not say, I hope. He says, I know. He does not say, someday. He says, now. The son does not place his good in the future, because he understands that the subconscious knows only the present. The son does not speak in the language of delay. He speaks in the language of possession. This is what I mean when I say you must pray as one who has, you must speak as one who already is. The greatest distinction you will ever learn is the difference between I will be and I am. I will be is the prayer of the beggar. It confesses absence. It places the desire in a future that never arrives, because tomorrow is always tomorrow. The subconscious knows only now. So I will be becomes I am not, and the not is what is outpictured. But I am is the speech of the Son. It is the present tense of God. It is the creative name spoken without delay. When you say I am, and you feel it, you plant a seed that must bear fruit. Not because the world is generous, but because the law is faithful. Not because chance favors you, but because consciousness externalizes itself. Now I know that for many, this is where tension rises. The mind says, but I cannot say I am wealthy when I am not. And I answer, you are confusing appearance with reality. Wealth is not first a number. Wealth is first a state. Wealth is first a feeling. Wealth is the inner atmosphere of being supplied, secure, at ease. You are not asked to lie about what you see. You are asked to enter the state that would produce a new seeing. You are asked to claim the cause, not to worship the effect. When you assume the state, you do not deny the world. You deny its finality. You do not deny the bill exists. You deny that the bill is the cause of your life. You deny that the bill has the last word. You speak the last word from within. That is spiritual authority. That is the sonship of which the scriptures speak. And this is where the inner language becomes so important, because you can sit through a lecture, you can hear these truths, you can even be inspired for a moment, and then you go back into your day, and the old inner speech returns like a familiar song. It returns automatically. It returns by habit. It returns because it has been rehearsed for years. And if you allow it, it will continue to write your life. So tonight, do not be content with inspiration. Make a decision about your inner speech. Decide that the secret words you whisper will no longer betray you. Decide that you will no longer attach "I am" to fear. Decide that you will no longer rehearse poverty in the theater of your mind, and then wonder why it appears on the stage of your world. Now listen closely, because I am about to prepare you for a very simple act, a command, a decree, one sentence, yet I will not give it to you just yet. There is a reason I wait. Most people want a formula the way a desperate man wants a pill. They want to swallow a sentence and wake up different without changing the state that speaks it. But the law does not respond to the letters of a phrase. It responds to the spirit behind it. And the spirit is your state. So before I give you the command, I must bring you to the place where the command can be spoken as truth and not as theater. I must lead you into the mood where you are no longer the beggar asking for money, but the son declaring supply. Because the same words spoken from two different states produce two entirely different results. A frightened man can say, "I am supplied," and the words will be empty, because his tone is lack. A free man can whisper, "I am supplied," and the entire world will begin to move because his tone is possession. The words are the same, but the state is different, and the subconscious hears only the state. So for now, do this with me, not as a technique, but as a quiet observation. Notice what you say inwardly when you think of money. Notice the mood that rises. Notice the old script, and do not condemn yourself for it. Simply recognize it as a habit, as an old garment you have been wearing. Recognition is the first liberation, because you cannot change what you do not see. And as you begin to see it, you will also begin to sense something else, that you are not your old inner voice. You are the one who hears it. You are the awareness behind it. You are the I am that can choose a new speech. That awareness is God. That awareness is the operant power. And it is from that awareness that you will speak your new word. In the next part, I will show you how the spoken word becomes creation, why speech is not communication but incarnation, and how feeling is the secret that gives your inner decree the power to dissolve the outer pressure. And then, when you are ready, when you have shifted from begging to assuming, I will place the command into your hands like a key, and you will know exactly how to use it. Most people think words are simply sounds. They believe speech exists only to describe, to request, to complain, to explain. They imagine their words rise into the air and then vanish. And because they believe that, they speak carelessly. They speak in moods they would never choose if they understood the consequence. They speak fear as though it were harmless. They speak lack as though it were only honesty. They speak defeat as though it were only realism. And then they are astonished when life reflects defeat back to them with exact fidelity. But I tell you, speech is not merely communication. Speech is creation. If you could see what happens when you speak with conviction, you would treat your words with reverence. You would realize you are not simply talking about life. You are forming life. You are shaping it. You are giving it a pattern. Every sentence spoken from belief is a mold. Every phrase repeated with feeling is a command pressed into the subconscious. The world you call external is the hardened form of words, once spoken out loud. Yes, but more importantly, inwardly. The scriptures reveal this in the simplest manner, yet most read it and miss its meaning. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. That is not merely a tale of beginning. That is the pattern of creation occurring now. God speaks, and the thing spoken appears. But if God is your own wonderful human imagination, then what does it mean when you speak? It means you are participating in the same act. You are not a creature talking into emptiness. You are God speaking into form. Now here is the delicate point that must be grasped, because this is where most fail, and then conclude the law does not work, when in truth it has been working perfectly. Words alone do not create. Words are vessels. Words are forms. They are like an empty cup. Feeling is the substance poured into the cup. Feeling is the spirit, and the spirit is what gives life. You may say the most perfect sentence in the world, but if you say it from a state of fear, the fear is what is impressed. You may memorize affirmations and repeat them by habit, but if the inner tone remains the tone of lack, then lack is the seed. Heaven does not hear vocabulary. The subconscious does not respond to grammar. It does not analyze your phrases and decide whether they are sensible. It responds to the feeling beneath them. It accepts the mood as the command. So the secret is not in saying the right words. The secret is in becoming the one who believes the words. The moment you feel the reality of what you speak, the word becomes flesh. The moment you enter the state and then speak from it, creation is finished in the invisible. You may not see the outer result at once, but the seed has been planted, and the harvest is sure. This is why one phrase, spoken in faith, weighs more than 1,000 spoken in anxiety. 1,000 affirmations repeated like a machine are still empty if they are not animated by feeling. But one sentence whispered with real relief, real gratitude, real certainty, can move the entire structure of your life. Do not measure power by repetition. Measure it by conviction. A single spark can light a room. 1,000 unlit lamps remain dark. Let me make this clear with an image that is simple yet exact. Feeling is the current. Words are the lamp. You can have the finest lamp in the house, polished and beautiful, but if there is no current, it will not shine. You can turn the switch again and again, and the lamp remains dark. Many people live like that. They keep flipping the switch of words, repeating phrases, hoping for light, but they have never supplied the current of feeling. So nothing changes. They conclude the lamp is broken, but the lamp is fine. The current is missing. When you supply the current, even a plain lamp shines brightly. And when you supply the current of conviction, even the simplest words become creative. You do not need eloquence. You need embodiment. You do not need long speeches. You need the inner electricity of belief. Now let me give you a story, because stories are how the mind understands what the heart already knows. A woman came to me once in great distress. She had been living under constant financial pressure. Her words were polite, her manners careful, but I could feel the fear in her. He told me she had been practicing affirmations for months. Each morning she stood before her mirror and repeated, "I am prosperous. I am prosperous. I am prosperous." She said it again and again until her throat felt dry. And yet, she said, the bills remained. The pressure remained. The world did not change. I asked her a very simple question. I said, "When you say these words, what do you feel?" She looked at me, surprised, as though no one had ever asked that. After a moment, she said, "I feel foolish." And then, almost in a whisper, she added, "And I feel afraid, because I don't believe it." There, in that confession, was the entire secret. Her lips were saying prosperous, but her feeling was saying afraid, and the subconscious, being faithful, heard only the deeper voice. It received fear as the seed, and produced conditions that justified fear. Not because life was cruel, but because the law is exact. So I said to her, "Stop repeating words for now. Stop trying to convince yourself with the mouth while the heart denies it. Close your eyes and let us do something different. Let us go to the end." I asked her to imagine a simple scene, not complicated, not long. I asked her to feel what she would feel if the entire matter were settled, if every bill were paid, if every pressure were gone, if she could open her mail without dread and look at a number without tightening. I told her, "Do not speak yet, just feel. Find the relief, find the ease, find the quiet smile that comes when something is handled." At first she struggled. The old state resisted. The mind tried to drag her back into counting and worrying. But I asked her to persist gently. Just for a moment, I said. Just for one breath, let yourself feel what it would feel like if it were done. And then I watched her shoulders soften. Her breathing deepened. The tightness in her face began to melt. It was as though the body itself recognized a state it had forgotten. And when that relief became real, only for a moment, she whispered, very softly, I am supplied. Now those words were the same kind of words she had spoken before. But this time, they were alive. They carried weight. They were not a chant. They were a confession of reality. And I knew, as surely as I know my own name, that something had changed in her. Not outside yet, but within, and within is where all change begins. She did not go home and repeat words all day. She did not strain. She did not fight. She simply practiced returning to that relief each night before sleep. And when she spoke from that feeling. Within a short time, so short, that it startled her, she received an unexpected sum from an old matter that had been forgotten, enough to clear what had been haunting her. She came back and said, Neville, it felt like life suddenly became kind. And I told her, life did not become kind. Your state became kind, and life mirrored it. This is the mechanics of the law. Feeling is the spirit. Word is the form. And when spirit fills form, the word becomes flesh. You must understand, you cannot trick the subconscious with empty repetition. It is not impressed by the noise of your lips. It is impressed by the reality of your mood. It is impressed by the sensation of being. That is why a child can assume something with such naturalness that it feels real, and then life mirrors it. A child does not struggle to believe while playing. The child simply enters the role. The child feels it. The child lives from it. And that childlike assumption is closer to the truth of creation than the anxious effort of the adult. So if you have been repeating affirmations and seeing little fruit, do not condemn yourself. Do not conclude the law is false. Understand what was missing. The current was missing. The feeling was missing. You were flipping the switch, but the lamp had no power. Now I want you to hear something very gently, because this is where many people become harsh with themselves. They say, but I cannot feel it. I cannot feel wealthy when I look at my life. And I answer, you do not need to feel wealthy in the grand sense at first. You need to feel the simplest essence of the fulfilled state. What would money bring you if it came? Relief, ease, rest, a quiet confidence, a loosening of the chest, a softening of the stomach, a sense that you are held. Begin there. You are not asked to force excitement. You are asked to enter relief. Relief is a feeling you can access even now. You can practice it as a state, gently, without strain. You can breathe as though the burden has lifted. You can let your shoulders drop as though it is handled. You can allow your mind to become quiet for a moment, as though the problem has already been solved. That is, feeling. And when you speak from that feeling, the words become creative. So tonight, do not focus on perfect phrasing. Do not search for the most impressive sentence. You will soon be given a command. Yes, but even that command is powerless if spoken from fear. The power is not in the syllables. The power is in the state. If you want your word to create, then let your word be the clothing of a new feeling. Let your word be the outward expression of an inward fact. Do not speak to persuade life. Speak because life is already persuaded by the state you occupy. This is why I tell you to cultivate the mood first. Before you speak, enter the feeling. Before you decree, become. Words are the bridge between the inner and the outer, but the bridge must be built on substance. Feeling is that substance. Without it, words are like mist. They drift and disappear. With feeling, words are like seed. They fall into the soil and grow. Now as you listen, you may be growing drowsy, and that is good, because this teaching is meant to sink below the surface. It is meant to reach the place where your habits live. And the place where habits live is not the intellect, it is the subconscious. The subconscious is moved by feeling, and the more relaxed you become, the more naturally these truths can be impressed. So let us set this firmly. Your words do not communicate, your words create, but they create according to the spirit in which they are spoken. Feeling is the spirit. And when you join the feeling of the wish fulfilled to a simple, quiet declaration, the word becomes flesh. In the next part, I will take you into the state where this union is easiest and most powerful. The state akin to sleep, that borderland where the conscious mind grows quiet and the subconscious opens like fertile ground. There, a single imaginal act, a single sentence spoken with feeling, can do more than weeks of strained effort. And when you understand how to use that doorway, you will understand why I have been saying all along that what you take into sleep becomes the world you wake into. There is a moment each night that most people pass through without reverence, without awareness, without any sense of what it truly is. They treat it as mere tiredness. They call it sleep. They think it is only rest for the body. But I tell you, it is far more than that. It is a doorway. It is the sacred threshold where the conscious mind loosens its grasp, and the deeper self, your subconscious, the womb of creation, stands open and receptive. The border of sleep is the workshop. It is the place where tomorrow is formed. It is the place where the unseen is impressed and the seen is born. When you approach this threshold in ignorance, you carry into it whatever the day has left in you: worry, resentment, fear, fatigue, and you fall asleep, rehearsing the very conditions you wish to escape. You lie down, and you replay the failures. You count the bills. You anticipate the pressure of the morning. You whisper inwardly, "What if this never changes?" And then you drift into sleep with those feelings still alive, and the subconscious receives them as seed. It does not resist you. It does not correct you. It accepts. And because it accepts, it must outpicture what it has received. You wake up, and the next day resembles the last. You call it bad luck. You call it hard times. But it is not luck, it is law. What you plant at the threshold, you harvest in the day. This is why I say to you tonight, if you want your life to change, begin by changing what you carry into sleep. The state akin to sleep, what I call sath, is the most fertile moment of your entire day, because in that twilight interval, the guard at the door of the subconscious relaxes. The conscious mind, that critical voice that argues and doubts and demands proof, grows quiet. And the imaginal act, if felt as real, passes easily into the depths where it will be accepted as fact. In waking life, you may try to convince yourself and fail, because the mind protests. It says that is not true. It points to the world. It points to numbers. It points to letters and deadlines and obligations. It demands evidence before it allows you peace. But in the drowsy state, those protests weaken. The mind becomes pliable. The imagination becomes vivid. And the subconscious becomes impressionable. A single scene felt in that state is more powerful than hours of effort in the day. Now hear me carefully, because the way you enter this state matters. You must not enter it with anxiety. You must not lie down with desperation and try to force results. That is still begging. That is still the state of I do not have. The threshold of sleep is not a place to plead. It is a place to possess. You go there as one who already has. You go there to seal a new reality, not to chase an old one. You do not approach the womb of creation like a frantic man pounding on a door. You approach it like a king entering his own chamber, calm, certain, and quiet. If you have been living under financial pressure, you have probably carried a certain tension into bed for years without noticing. A tightening in the stomach, a rush of thoughts, the mind reviewing the day and forecasting the next. That tension is a state, and a state carried into sleep becomes the blueprint of the next experience. So tonight, we reverse it. Tonight, we enter the threshold in peace, not because the outer world has changed yet, but because the inner world has. Here is the practical way, spoken softly, so it can be used as you are drifting. Lie down in a position that is natural. Let the body become comfortable. Do not strain. Do not hold yourself rigid. Let the muscles loosen as if you are surrendering the whole weight of the day. Let the breath slow and deepen. And as you breathe, allow the mind to become quieter. You are not trying to stop thought by force. You are simply letting thought slow, like a river settling when the wind dies down. As you feel yourself drifting toward that gentle drowsiness, choose one simple scene. Not a long story, not a complicated plan, not an entire drama. One short scene that implies your desire is already fulfilled. The scene must not be about trying to become free. It must be about already being free. If your desire is the dissolving of debt, then imagine the moment that would naturally follow the dissolving of debt. Perhaps it is a letter in your hand that says, paid in full. Perhaps it is a stamp on a bill. Those simple words that carry such relief. Balance, zero. Perhaps it is the sound of your own voice, speaking to someone you trust, saying calmly, it's all settled now. Perhaps it is the feeling of putting papers away, not with dread, but with completion. Perhaps it is waking in the morning and realizing the old pressure is gone, that your chest feels light, that you can breathe without bracing. Choose one. Keep it simple. The subconscious does not require complexity. In fact, complexity often weakens the impression because the mind becomes busy managing details. The subconscious responds to feeling and to implication. One scene that implies the end is achieved contains the entire fulfillment within it, just as a seed contains the entire tree. Now do not watch the scene as though you are observing it from a distance. Enter it, see through your own eyes, hear through your own ears, feel with your own hands. If you imagine holding a letter, feel the paper, feel its weight, see the words clearly, but more than that, feel the relief those words would bring. Let your body respond as though it were true now. Let the shoulders drop. Let the breath deepen. Let the stomach soften. Let a quiet smile arise. That smile is not pretending. That smile is the subconscious recognizing a new fact. Repeat the scene gently, not like a man forcing a door, but like a lullaby you fall into. Again and again, softly, until it begins to take on the tones of reality. At first it may feel like imagination, like make-believe. Persist without strain, and something shifts. The scene begins to feel natural. Your body begins to accept it. The relief becomes real, and when the relief is real, the seed is planted. If you fall asleep while you are still in the scene, that is the greatest success. For what you take into sleep is what the subconscious takes as instruction. The moment sleep overtakes you while you are living in the feeling of freedom, the impression passes into the depths without resistance and begins its work. Now you may ask, but what if I cannot hold the scene? Do not worry. You do not need long effort. A few moments, deeply felt, are enough. The subconscious is not impressed by duration. It is impressed by reality. 1 minute of real relief is worth an hour of strained visualization. If the scene slips, return gently. If thoughts wander, return gently. Do not scold yourself. You are training the mind to enter a new state, and training is always gentle repetition. And I want you to understand something that removes a great burden from many people. You do not have to know how it will happen. You are not asked to design the bridge. In the state akin to sleep, you are not drawing maps. You are not arranging events. You are simply accepting the end. The subconscious, once impressed, will build a bridge of incidents. It will move people, open doors, rearrange circumstances in ways you could not have planned. Your only task is to plant the end. The means will follow of their own accord. This is why the borderland is so precious. It allows you to bypass the anxious mind that insists on knowing how. In waking life you say, but how will the debt dissolve? Where will the money come from? What if it takes too long? Those questions are the language of the beggar. They are the confession that it is not done. But in the drowsy state, you can simply feel it done, and let the how remain hidden, because it is not your concern. The seed contains its own plan. Now stay with me, because I am bringing you closer and closer to the command itself, the sentence that seals this state with quiet authority. In a moment I will give it to you, but first you must understand why it works. For if I give you the words too soon, You may repeat them as empty sound, and I want you to speak them as living truth. So remember this: the threshold of sleep is your treasury. It is the workshop of God, and God is your own wonderful imagination. Each night you enter that workshop, whether you know it or not. Tonight you will enter it knowingly. Tonight you will not carry fear into the womb. Tonight you will carry fulfillment. Tonight you will plant freedom, and the world, being only the echo of what you have planted, must in time reflect it. Let this be your quiet promise as you drift. I will not go to sleep rehearsing bondage. I will go to sleep inhabiting freedom. I will not enter the night as one begging for mercy. I will enter as one who already possesses. And in that state, the seed is planted. The work is done. The bridge is already forming beneath the surface. And you will wake sooner than you think to a world that begins to mirror what you dared to accept in the silence. There is a chain that binds more people than any bill ever could, and it is not made of paper or numbers. It is made of memory. It is made of scenes. It is made of the quiet sting of what happened, the humiliation you still feel when you think of a past mistake, the regret that rises when you remember a decision you believe ruined your finances, the shame that tightens your body when you recall an unpaid account, a harsh conversation, a letter you dreaded, a moment when you felt small. Most people live as prisoners of yesterday. They drag it behind them like a heavy sack, and each day they open the sack again and again, rehearsing the same scene, reliving the same pain, and wondering why it continues to follow them. They do not realize that the past is not dead. It is not finished. It is not sealed. The past lives in consciousness. And what lives in consciousness can be changed. This is one of the most hidden truths of all, and it feels like a secret, because the world insists the opposite. The world tells you what's done is done. It tells you you can learn from it, but you cannot change it. It tells you you must accept it, and men accept it and remain bound. But I tell you, not only is the future moldable, the past is also moldable, because the past is not stored in stone. It is stored in feeling, and feeling is the one thing you can revise. When I speak of revision, I am not speaking of a mere positive thought. I am speaking of an imaginal act that alters the root of a present condition. You see, every memory you entertain is a present act of imagining. It is happening now. The past only exists as you recreate it, and each time you recreate it with the old emotion, shame, fear, regret, you are not simply remembering. You are replanting. You are impressing the subconscious again with the same seed. And the subconscious, faithful as ever, continues to produce the same kind of harvest. This is why patterns repeat. This is why the same financial troubles return under new names. A man thinks he escaped one debt and then meets another. A woman thinks she moved past a humiliation and then finds herself again in a similar scene. They do not realize they have been carrying the same state, revived daily by memory. Memory, clothed in feeling, is a creative act. Now this truth can sound shocking at first, because it seems to challenge common sense. But listen quietly. If a memory can make your body tense now, if it can make your stomach turn now, if it can make your heart beat faster now, then that memory is not past, it is present. It is alive in you. And because it is alive, it can be altered. If it can be reenacted inwardly as pain, it can be reenacted inwardly as peace. And the moment you change the feeling of the past, you change its effect upon your present, for the present is only the outpicturing of the dominant states you carry. Revision is the art of going back in imagination and rewriting a scene, not to deny that something occurred in the world of appearances, but to deny its creative power over you now. You revise the scene until it feels as though it happened differently, and when it feels real, the subconscious accepts the revised version as fact. And then the most extraordinary thing begins to happen. The present rearranges itself to match the new past. If you have ever been haunted by a financial mistake, a loss, a humiliation, an argument about money, then you already know how much power the past has over the mind. Perhaps you remember the day you were told you were behind. Perhaps you remember a letter marked overdue. Perhaps you remember the voice of someone who spoke to you as though you were irresponsible, as though you were small. Perhaps you remember the moment you felt exposed. That scene may still live in you like a thorn, and each time you touch it, you feel the same sting. But here is the liberation. You do not have to keep touching it. You do not have to keep living in it. You can revise it, and in revising it, you redeem yourself. Revision is redemption. Revision is forgiveness. Revision is the cleansing of consciousness. Now let me make it very practical. If you wish to revise a financial past, you do not need to revise your entire life story at once. Begin with one scene that carries the strongest emotional charge. Choose the moment that, when you think of it, still tightens you. It may be a conversation, it may be a letter, it may be a phone call, it may be an image of an unpaid bill, or an empty purse, or a mistake you made. Choose one. You do this not to punish yourself, but to free yourself. Then at night, as you become drowsy, again in that state akin to sleep, replay the scene, but do not let it unfold as it did. Hear different words. See a different expression on the other person's face. Change the outcome until it matches what you would have wanted to experience. Most importantly, change the feeling. If you felt shame then, feel dignity now. If you felt fear then, feel relief now. If you felt rejection then, feel kindness now. You might say, but Neville, that is not what happened. And I tell you, what happened is not the point. The point is what you are continuing to cause by remembering it as it was. If the old memory is producing pain now, it is still active. And if it is active, it can be revised. You are not altering history for the sake of argument. You are altering consciousness for the sake of freedom. And consciousness is the only cause. Let me give you a testimony, because it will illuminate this more clearly than explanation alone. A woman once came to me, deeply troubled. She was not only burdened by debt, but by a particular memory that haunted her. She had had a conversation with a creditor, sharp, humiliating, filled with harsh words. The man had spoken to her with contempt, and she had felt small, helpless, ashamed. The scene lived in her mind like a wound that would not close. Every time she thought of money, that scene returned, and with it the feeling of being judged, powerless, trapped. She told me, Neville, I cannot even think of my finances without feeling sick. And I said, then the past is still creating your present. We will change the past in consciousness. I instructed her to revise the conversation each night, not for hours, not with strain, but gently as she drifted towards sleep. I told her to hear the same man's voice, but this time speaking kindly. I told her to imagine him saying, do not worry, it is taken care of. You are not in trouble. Everything is settled. I told her to see his face softened, his tone respectful, and I told her to feel the difference, to feel the relief of being cleared, to feel the dignity of being treated as worthy, to let the shame dissolve from her body as though warm light were melting it. At first she resisted. The mind protested. The old scene seemed fixed, but she persisted. And after several nights, something shifted. She said, Neville, I began to feel calm. The memory stopped hurting. And I said, that is the sign. The revision has taken root. Now listen to what followed, because this is where the law reveals itself in a way that no argument can deny. Within a short time, days, not months, the same creditor contacted her again, but his tone was entirely different. He apologized for his harshness. He spoke politely. And more than that, he offered a settlement arrangement so generous that it astonished her. The pressure she had feared dissolved. The relationship changed. The entire outer circumstance softened and rearranged itself as though the old scene had never occurred. She came to me with tears in her eyes and said, Neville, it's as if the past truly changed. And I told her, in consciousness it did. And because consciousness is the only cause, the world must reflect it. Now, You might ask how such a thing is possible. It is possible because the world is yourself pushed out. The behavior of others toward you reflects the state you hold about yourself and about them. When she carried the memory of humiliation, she carried the state of being judged and powerless, and the world mirrored that. When she revised the memory, she changed the state. She no longer felt judged. She no longer felt powerless. She felt cleared, respected, safe. And the world had to mirror that new state. Revision is not merely a method for feeling better. It is a method for changing the conditions that were born from old feeling. Financial patterns often originate not in practical mistakes alone, but in emotional wounds, shame, fear, the sense of being unworthy, the belief that money is dangerous or that you are always behind. These beliefs are often planted in childhood, in family conversations, in humiliations, in moments of lack, and they continue to bear fruit until they are revised. So if you have carried a painful financial past, if you have told yourself, I ruined it, I made a mistake, I'll never recover, understand that those are not facts, those are states. They are only the old story repeated, and you can write a new story, not tomorrow, tonight. There is something deeply merciful about this teaching, because it means you are never trapped by what has been. You are not condemned to live as the person who failed, the person who lost, the person who was humiliated. That person is a state, and you can die to that state by revising it. The old self can be buried, and the new self can rise. Now, if you are listening as you drift towards sleep, you may already be in the perfect condition to begin revision without effort. Because revision is easiest when the body is calm and the mind is quiet. As you lie there, you might gently choose one old scene that still carries weight. You do not need to fight it. You simply replay it and soften it. Change one sentence. Change one expression. Change the outcome. Let yourself hear the words you needed to hear. Let yourself experience the dignity you deserved. Let yourself feel the relief of being cleared. And when the scene feels real, when the sting is gone and peace replaces it, let it carry you into sleep. That is revision. That is redemption. That is the past being rewritten in the only place it ever truly existed: consciousness. Now hold this truth close, because revision does not merely heal the heart, it changes the harvest. If your present financial life has been built upon old feelings of shame, fear, and limitation, then revising those feelings is like changing the foundation of a house. The entire structure must shift. The outer world cannot remain the same when the inner root has changed. In the next part, I will show you how the bridge of incidents unfolds after such inner acts, how life rearranges in ways that may seem strange at first, but are in fact the exact path by which your new state becomes visible. And as we move toward that, remember, you are not only shaping tomorrow, you are redeeming yesterday. And when yesterday is redeemed, tomorrow cannot help but shine with a new light. Now there is a point in this teaching where many falter, not because they lack sincerity, not because they lack desire, but because they do not understand how the law fulfills itself. They imagine that once they assume a new state, the world should instantly rearrange in a way that is obvious, clean, and comfortable. They expect a straight line. They expect the outer world to change in a way that pleases the senses immediately. And when it does not, they grow anxious. They begin to check, to question, to doubt. They uproot the seed they planted, not knowing that the seed was already alive. So I must tell you this with all the tenderness and all the firmness I can. Do not design the bridge. Do not try to dictate the manner in which your assumption will become fact. Do not decide how the money must come, from whom it must come, on what day it must come, in what exact form it must come. The moment you do that, you step out of faith and into control. And control is simply fear, dressed as strategy. It is the old state trying to keep its throne. When you impress the subconscious with the end is accepted. The seed is planted. The work is done in the invisible. But the visible world, bound by sequence, must rearrange itself through a series of events. These events are what I call the bridge of incidents. It is the natural path, the unfolding chain of circumstances that carries you from where you are to the state you have assumed. And listen carefully, the bridge is not built by your conscious planning. It is built by the subconscious, by the deeper intelligence within you, by the power that knows how to externalize your assumption with perfect precision. You may think you know the shortest way. You do not. You may think you know the only way. You do not. The subconscious sees connections you cannot see. It moves through channels you would never imagine. It stirs people you have forgotten. It opens doors you did not know existed. It closes doors that could not carry you into your end. It rearranges the entire stage, and it does so often in ways that appear strange to the senses. This is why the bridge confuses so many, because at the level of appearances, it may look like delay. It may look like a setback. It may look like a door closing. It may even look like things are getting worse. But in truth, it is life reorganizing itself. It is the old structure dissolving to make room for the new. It is the law fulfilling itself. Fine man assumes wealth. Soon after, he loses the job he hated. To the senses, it looks like disaster. To the law, it is the first plank of the bridge. A woman assumes freedom from debt. Soon after, a creditor contacts her again. To the senses, it looks like the problem is returning. To the law, it is the moment of resolution approaching. A person assumes a new opportunity, and suddenly an old plan collapses. To the senses, it looks like failure. To the law, it is redirection. So I tell you, do not judge the bridge while you are crossing it. Do not interpret the unfolding events with fear. Do not say, this is going wrong, simply because it does not look the way you expected. The law often fulfills itself in ways that are so natural, so ordinary, so seemingly accidental, that you will only recognize them afterward. You will look back and say, of course, that had to happen for this to happen. But in the moment, the mind wants to panic. The mind wants to control. The mind wants to return to the old state of doubt. And here is the great danger. If you react to the bridge as though it were failure, you may abandon your assumption at the very moment it is ripening into fact. You may interpret the rearrangement as denial when it is actually delivery. You may dig up the seed because the soil looks disturbed, not realizing that disturbance is part of growth. I have said many times that the way to fulfillment is not a matter of your choosing each event. It is a matter of your remaining faithful to the end. The end is what you are responsible for. The means are not your responsibility. The means are the work of the law. If you hold to the end, the bridge will form. If you abandon the end, the bridge collapses. So if you can learn one discipline, let it be this. Remain loyal to the feeling of the wish fulfilled, even as life rearranges itself. When something unexpected happens, do not ask, why is this happening? With fear. Ask, how is this serving my end? With quiet trust. When a door closes, do not mourn it as loss. Bless it as protection. When a delay appears, do not call it denial. Call it timing. When a detour arises, do not resist it. Walk it with the calm assurance that the bridge is perfect. Let me give you a story, because this is where the heart needs reassurance more than the mind needs explanation. A man once came to me, burdened with a financial situation that seemed impossible. He had debts that pressed upon him, and he had been practicing the law. He had entered the state akin to sleep, imagined himself free, felt the relief, and he had begun to live from the end. For a time, he felt peace. Then, suddenly, the outer world seemed to turn against him. A letter arrived, more severe than before. A demand, a deadline. The old fear rose like a wave, and he came to me shaken, saying, Neville, it is getting worse. I must have done something wrong. I looked at him and said, no, it is moving. He did not understand. I said, if you had not changed state, life would not need to rearrange. The old pattern would simply continue, but you have planted a new seed, and now the world is shifting to reflect it. Do not retreat, do not surrender your end. Hold to it more quietly than ever. Let your heart remain in the relief you have felt. Speak no fear. Do not argue with appearances. This letter is not the final word. It is the last noise of the old state. He went home, trembling, but he obeyed. That night he did not rehearse the letter. He revised it. He imagined instead receiving a notice of settlement. He felt the relief. He fell asleep in peace. The next day, he took no frantic action. He did what was necessary outwardly, yes, but inwardly he remained faithful to the end. Within days, he received another letter. It was an apology. The demand had been made in error, due to a miscalculation. The account was adjusted. The pressure was lifted. And in the weeks that followed, a series of events unfolded, an unexpected opportunity, an old contact, a new arrangement that resolved the entire matter with exactness. He returned to me with wonder in his eyes and said, "It looked like it was collapsing, but it was correcting." And I said, "That is the bridge." The world does not always rearrange gently. Sometimes it moves with force, because the old structure must break to make room for the new. But the end remained the same, and therefore the bridge could not fail. This is why I caution you against trying to control the how. The more you insist on one narrow path, the more you may resist the very route the law is using. You may miss the fulfillment because it comes in a form you did not predict. You may demand the money come from one person, when the law intends it come through another. You may demand it come by one event, when a different event is the true bridge. Your conscious mind cannot see the whole field. It sees only a small corner, and calls that corner reality. But the subconscious is vast. It moves through the whole field. Trust it. So if you have assumed freedom, and then something strange occurs, do not panic. If you have revised the past, and then an old matter resurfaces, do not fear. If you have planted the seed, and then the surface looks disturbed, do not interpret that as failure. It is movement. It is the law rearranging the pieces. You must also understand that the bridge is always natural. It rarely announces itself with trumpets. It often looks like ordinary life, a conversation, a meeting, a letter, a chance encounter, a shift in timing. And because it looks ordinary, many dismiss it. They say, "That was nothing." But later, they realize that nothing was the very link that carried them to the fulfillment. Therefore, walk your days with quiet attentiveness, not anxious vigilance. You are not hunting for signs like a frightened man scanning the horizon. You are simply living as one who knows the end is secure, while allowing life to bring the bridge to you. And when events unfold, meet them with the calm of one who understands. Do not fight the bridge. Do not resist it. Do not curse the detour. Do not interpret the closing door as rejection. The bridge may be built of closures and openings, of endings and beginnings, of releases and arrivals. All of it serves the same end. If you can accept this, you will protect your faith from the greatest enemy, impatience. You will stop asking, "Why is it taking so long?" Because you will understand that time is simply the stage upon which the unseen becomes seen. You will stop saying, "It is not working," because you will recognize that the moment you assumed the end, it began working. You will stop demanding to see the bridge before you step, because the bridge appears under your feet as you walk in faith. So let this settle in you now, especially if you are listening on the edge of sleep. You have planted your seed. You have entered the state. You have spoken inwardly. You have revised. You have assumed. Now trust the bridge. Let it form. Let it carry you. Do not dictate the route. Do not panic at the turns. Do not grow frightened at the temporary noise of the old world. Remain loyal to the end, and the end will pull you to itself with the certainty of law. And as we move closer now to the command itself, the sentence you will carry into sleep, remember this: the command is not meant to control the bridge. The command is meant to seal the end. Once the end is sealed, the bridge is inevitable. In a moment, I will place that command in your hands, but first I must show you the final discipline that makes it unstoppable: persistence in the end, and the refusal to return to the old inner speech, no matter what appearance is present. After you have spoken the inner word, After you have entered the state and felt it as real, there is something more powerful than any additional effort you could make. It is not another technique. It is not more imagining. It is not more words. It is the art of stopping. It is the holy discipline of rest. It is what the scriptures call the Sabbath. Most people do not understand this, and because they do not, they sabotage the very thing they have created. They plant the seed, and then they dig it up. They impress the subconscious, and then they contradict it. They decree freedom at night, and then they rehearse bondage by day. They speak from the end for a moment, and then they return to the old state the next hour. And then they say, the law does not work. But the law has always worked. It was their rest that was missing. The Sabbath is not a day on a calendar. It is a state of consciousness. It is the feeling of completion. It is the quiet certainty that the act is done. It is the inner exhale that says, it is finished, and means it. When you enter this rest, you stop striving. You stop checking. You stop scanning the outer world like a frightened man looking for proof. You stop measuring. You stop asking, is it working? Because the very question is a confession that you do not believe it is done. If you could see how many people lose their harvest because they cannot leave the seed alone, you would understand why I insist upon this so strongly. They lie down and imagine freedom. They feel relief. They even fall asleep in that state. And then the morning comes, and they rush to the mirror of the world to see if it has changed. They open the letter. They check the numbers. They look for signs. And when they do not immediately see what they want, they sink back into fear. And in that fear, they plant again the old seed. They cancel their own work. A farmer does not plant a seed and then return each morning to dig it up and examine it. If he did, the seed would never take root. It would be destroyed by his own anxious hands. He plants, he covers it, he waters it, and then he leaves it. He trusts the unseen process. He does not call it a delusion because the sprout is not visible the next day. He understands the law of growth. So it is with the law of consciousness. Once you have performed the imaginal act, once you have impressed the subconscious with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, the seed is planted. The bridge of incidence has begun to form. Your work is finished in the creative realm. What remains is gestation. And gestation happens in silence. It happens in darkness. It happens beyond the reach of anxious hands. This is why the Sabbath is the greatest discipline and also the sweetest. It is the moment you surrender the need to control. It is the moment you cease from mental labor, not because you have given up, but because you have succeeded. You rest because you know it is done. You rest because you have already accepted it inwardly as fact. You rest because you understand that the outer world is only the echo, and echoes take time to return. Now, how do you know you have truly performed the act? There is a sign, and it is not in the outer world, it is within you. The sign is peace. When the act is done, a stillness follows it. A quiet settles over you. It feels like relief, but deeper. It feels like the mind has stopped arguing. It feels like the heart has stopped pleading. It feels as though something has been decided. That peace is not something you force. It arises naturally when you have entered the end. And when you feel that peace, do not disturb it. Do not rush to confirm it. Do not demand that the world bow immediately. Protect that peace as you would protect a flame in the wind. For peace is the Sabbath. Peace is the proof that the seed has been planted. If you can learn to recognize that inner stillness, you will stop making the mistake of endless effort. You will stop repeating affirmations out of panic. You will stop trying to make it happen with sheer will. You will understand that your only true action is the imaginal act, and your only true maintenance is rest. Now many will ask, but Neville, what do I do during the day? And I answer, you live. You go about your normal tasks. You pay what must be paid. You do what must be done. But you do it from a different state. You do it without inner panic. You do it without contradicting your decree. You do it with the quiet feeling that you are already provided for, already free, already carried. That is Sabbath living. You are not sitting idle. You are moving through life, with an inner stillness. And here is a discipline that seems small, but it is mighty. Stop checking. Stop checking. Not only the outer things, but the inner compulsions. Stop checking for proof. Stop checking for signs. Stop checking whether you feel it enough. The desire to check is always the desire to doubt. It is the old state trying to reassert itself. When you feel that impulse, pause, breathe. Return to the quiet knowing. Say inwardly, "It is done," and then release the matter again. The Sabbath is not forgetfulness. It is trust. It is the knowledge that the unseen process is underway, whether you watch it or not. The seed does not grow faster because you stare at the soil. It grows because it is alive. Now let me tell you something beautiful that often appears when the Sabbath is real. Gratitude begins to rise. Not forced gratitude, not manufactured thankfulness, not a list you write to convince yourself. True gratitude, the kind that flows effortlessly when you feel you already have. Gratitude is the perfume of the fulfilled desire. It is the scent that rises naturally from the state of possession. You do not say thank you to persuade God. You say thank you because you feel the gift is already yours. This is why gratitude is so powerful. It is not a tool, it is evidence. It is the inner atmosphere that tells you, "I have accepted it." When you can whisper, "Thank you," without strain, when you can feel appreciation as though the burden is truly lifted, you have entered the end. And when you have entered the end, the outer world must eventually reflect it. Many attempt gratitude as a method to get, but they do it while feeling they do not have. That is not gratitude. That is begging in a softer voice. True gratitude cannot be faked. It arises when the subconscious has been impressed and the state feels natural. So if you do not feel gratitude yet, do not condemn yourself. Return to the imaginal act. Return to the feeling of relief. And as relief becomes natural, gratitude will come like fragrance. The Sabbath, then, is a circle of completion. You imagine, you feel, you decree. You rest, you give thanks. You refuse to contradict, and you allow life to do what it always does, mirror the state. This is where the great truth returns again. Quietly, like the tide. Money follows consciousness, not the other way around. Money does not create your peace. Your peace creates the conditions that money will mirror. Money does not grant you freedom. Freedom assumed becomes the cause from which money appears in forms that match that freedom. The world does not decide whether you are supplied. Your consciousness decides, and the world echoes. So as you listen now, perhaps becoming heavier with sleep, let this settle into you like warm water. The act is done when peace is present. The seed is planted when you can rest. The work is finished when you no longer feel the need to check, and gratitude is the sweet scent of that finished work. If you can carry one thing with you into sleep tonight, let it be this: I do not need to strain. I do not need to beg. I do not need to chase the shadow. I change the light, and the shadow must change. I assume the end, and the bridge forms. I speak, and I rest. I plant, and I do not dig it up. I give thanks, and I let the law unfold. Because money follows consciousness, and consciousness is the only cause. And now we come to the moment I promised you from the beginning. Not because there is magic in a string of words, but because there is power in a word that names a state you have truly entered. I did not withhold this from you to create drama. I withheld it because I wanted you to understand what makes a command. A command. A command is not a sentence you recite. A command is a decree, spoken from the throne of being. It is the voice of the I Am made audible in you. So I give it to you now, simple, biblical in its spirit, and inevitable in its effect when it is spoken from faith. The command is this: I am free, and it is done. That is the command. Not, I hope to be free. Not, I will be free someday. Not, please make me free. But I am free, and it is done. Hold it for a moment. Let it rest in you. Feel the weight of its finality. It does not argue. It does not argue. It does not negotiate. It does not explain. It stands as the last word. It is a door closing on the old life. It is a door opening on the new. Now I must tell you how to say it, because if you say it as a formula, it will be empty. If you say it like a frightened man repeating a charm, it will carry fear. But if you say it as truth, as one who has already entered the state, it becomes creative. The words are short, but the state behind them is vast. When you say, I am free, do not say it while gripping the old chains in your imagination. Say it as though the chains have already fallen. Say it as though the weight is already lifted. Say it as though you can breathe again. Let your shoulders drop when you speak it. Let your chest soften. Let your breath deepen. Let the body become the evidence. For the subconscious believes what you feel, and feeling is the secret. And when you say, and it is done, do not say it with strain, as though trying to force something into existence. Say it with the calm of completion. Say it the way the earth says morning. Say it the way the sea says tide. Say it as inevitability. I am free, and it is done. Now I will speak it again. And as I speak it, let it sink beneath your mind, beneath your questions, beneath your old habits. Let it fall like seed into the fertile ground of your deeper self. I am free, and it is done. You may be listening with tired eyes. You may be lying in darkness. You may feel the night wrapping around you. Good. This is the perfect hour for a decree. This is when the conscious mind becomes quiet and the subconscious opens like rich soil. This is when the command is received most deeply. So tonight, when you enter the state akin to sleep, you will not beg. You will not plead. You will not bargain. You will enter the feeling of relief first, and then from that relief, you will whisper the command. I am free and it is done. Say it slowly, not quickly, not mechanically. Slowly enough that your body can accept it. Slowly enough that your heart can feel it. Slowly enough that your mind has no room to argue. I am free, and it is done. And if you feel even the smallest wave of relief, even the faintest sense of peace, that is the spirit behind the word, that is the current, that is the electricity. Now the lamp will shine. You might say, Neville, free from what? You know what? Free from the pressure, free from the dread, free from the sense of being trapped by numbers, free from the old story, free from the inner voice that confesses lack, free from the fear that has followed you into bed, free from the shame that has followed you into daylight, free from the past that has tried to define you, free from the belief that money is your master. I am free, and it is done. And if your desire is specifically financial, you can let the word free carry that meaning without strain. You do not need to name every detail. You do not need to list every debt. You do not need to rehearse what you are escaping. The subconscious does not need your explanation. It needs your state. Free is a state, and when you inhabit it, life must find a way to express it. So you may whisper it like this, as the drowsiness comes, I am free, and it is done. And then you may allow it to become even softer, like a lullaby spoken from certainty. I am free, it is done. And if the words become almost silent, let the feeling remain. For the feeling is the secret, and the words are only the clothing of it. I am free, and it is done. Now I want you to hear the biblical spirit in this, because it is not new, it is as old as creation. The words, it is done, are the seal. They are the Sabbath. They are the end of labor. They are the quiet announcement that creation is finished in consciousness. When you say it is done, you are refusing to dig up the seed. You are refusing to check. You are refusing to doubt. You are entering rest, and rest is faith. So let the command become a rhythm in you, not a chant, not an anxious repetition. A rhythm, a slow, gentle pulse that carries you into sleep. I am free, and it is done. Again, I am free, and it is done. And again, but with a slightly different sweetness, as though you are telling your own heart the truth. It has been waiting to hear, I am free, and it is done. Now do not be surprised if emotion rises when you say it. Some feel tears, some feel warmth, some feel a soft release in the chest, some feel a strange calm. Let it happen. That is not weakness. That is the old state dissolving. That is the body receiving a new instruction. That is the subconscious accepting the seed. And if you cannot feel much at first, do not force it. Do not strain. Simply repeat the command gently from the desire to be free, and let the feeling grow naturally. A seed does not become a tree in a moment, but it becomes a seedling quickly when it is planted in good soil. And the soil tonight is the threshold of sleep. So I say to you now, as if I were sitting beside you in the quiet of night, do not carry the old world into sleep. Do not carry the old burden into the womb of creation. Lay it down. Enter the feeling of release, and then speak the command as the final word over your life. I am free, and it is done. Say it as a decree. Say it as a promise already kept. Say it as a door already closed on the old story. Say it as the beginning of a new chapter that does not require your struggle. I am free, and it is done. And when you have said it, do what the Creator does after creation. Rest. Be still. Let the peace come. Let gratitude rise. Let the night receive your seed. And let life, without your anxious interference, build the bridge of incidents that will make your inner freedom visible as outer fact. For I tell you again, and I want this to be the last thought you carry as you drift, money follows consciousness. And when consciousness has said, I am free, the world must find a way to echo freedom. I am free, and it is done. If you have listened with me all the way to this moment, then you already know something about yourself. You are not merely curious. You are not merely passing time. You are one of the few who can remain with a truth long enough for it to take root. Most people turn away the moment the world demands that they change inwardly. They want a new life without a new state. They want the harvest without the seed. They want freedom without the inner decree. But you have stayed. And because you have stayed, I tell you plainly, you are nearer to the secret than most will ever come. There are many who will hear fragments of these teachings and go no further. They will take a sentence, repeat it like a charm, and then return at once to the old inner speech. They will look for signs, and when they do not see them immediately, they will call the law false. But you, if you have followed me into the depths of this, have already stepped out of that crowd. You have shown by your attention, by your willingness, that you are ready to live as one who knows. And I want you to feel this, not as flattery, but as recognition, for to remain with the truth until it becomes part of you is rare. The world is noisy, the mind is restless, fear is persuasive, yet you have continued. You have listened. You have let the idea of your own power press upon you. That alone is a sign that something in you is awakening. The old self that begged is growing tired. The son, the daughter, is rising. So now, do not let this remain only words you heard. Do not treat this like a story you enjoyed and then forgot. This is not meant to be admired. It is meant to be practiced. Tonight, yes, tonight, when you lay your head upon the pillow, you will have a choice. You can enter sleep, as you have entered sleep 1,000 times before, rehearsing worry, counting problems, revisiting shame, building tomorrow out of yesterday's fear. Or you can enter the threshold as one who has heard the truth and dares to apply it. I ask you to do something very simple, but very decisive. Tonight, enter that drowsy borderland and feel the relief of being free. Do not negotiate with the old state. Do not argue with appearances. Do not plead for a distant God. Enter the feeling and then speak the command gently. As truth, as finality. I am free, and it is done. Say it until peace comes. Not because you are forcing it, but because you are accepting it. And when the peace comes, stop. Rest. Let the seed be planted, and do not dig it up again with doubt. Let the night become your treasury. Let sleep become your workshop. Let the subconscious do what it always does, outpicture what you have impressed upon it. Now, because I am speaking to you in this way, and because many of you will want to anchor this for yourself, I invite you, when you are able, to leave a simple sentence as your own public confession of the state you are choosing. Not a long explanation, not a story, just a quiet decree that marks your decision. Write these words exactly as they are. I am free, and it is done. Let that be your signal, not only to me but to yourself. Let it be the line you cross. The moment you stop asking and begin assuming. The moment you stop living as effect and begin living as cause. When you put it into words, you are claiming it. You are declaring it. You are no longer hiding in doubt. And if you wish, add one more sentence beneath it. Short, simple, and true. Something like, tonight, I will enter sleep in possession. Or tonight, I choose the end. But keep it brief. The power is in the state, not in the speech. And if you have found something here that you know you must return to, then return to it, hear it again. Not as entertainment, but as reinforcement. There is nothing wrong with listening again before sleep, because this message is designed to be received in that very state where the subconscious is open. Let it be the last atmosphere you carry into the night. Let it wash away the old inner conversations. Let it quiet the old fears. Let it guide you gently into the feeling of fulfillment. If you wish to remain with these teachings, then remain with them. Make a habit of returning to the end. Make a habit of guarding your inner speech. Make a habit of revision. Make a habit of rest after the decree. These are not burdens. They are freedoms. They are the simple disciplines of one who has remembered who he is. And should you feel doubt tomorrow, should the old world present its familiar face, do not be frightened. Do not interpret the echo as the cause. Remember, the world is only catching up. Speak softly again, not with desperation, but with authority. I am free, and it is done. Then go about your day. Walk as though the decree is law, because it is. Let gratitude be your perfume. Let peace be your evidence. Let rest be your faith. Few will do this. Few will dare to take responsibility for their inner speech. Few will persist long enough for the assumption to feel natural. Few will understand that money follows consciousness, and not the other way around. But you have come this far, and that tells me you are willing to be among the few. So I leave you now with the simplest charge I can give. Practice tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight. Do it once. Do it quietly. Do it faithfully. And then watch, without strain, without obsession, without fear, as life begins to reorganize itself around the new state you have chosen. And when you begin to see it, when the pressure eases, when the letters change their tone, when unexpected openings appear, do not call it luck, call it law, call it the echo of your own decree. And remember, the greatest wealth is not the number itself, but the freedom of the one who knows he is the cause. Tonight, enter sleep as that one. I am free, and it is done.